Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hey there. Did you know Kroger always gives you savings and rewards on top of our lower than low prices? And when you download the Kroger app, you'll enjoy over $500 in savings every week with digital coupons. And don't forget fuel points to help you save up to $1 per gallon at the pump. Want to save even more? With a Boost membership, you'll get double fuel points and free delivery. So shop and save big at Kroger today. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Savings may vary by state. Restrictions apply. See site for details.
Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our Quick Publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms, and we have our own apps for Apple and Android. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Rival Recon here on Anfield Index Pro. I'm Harry Sethi. The Reds bounced back from their self-inflicted blip at the Emirates last weekend with a 3-1 win over Burnley to re-establish their lead at the top of the Premier League. Up next for Klopp's side, perhaps one of their trickiest remaining away trips, as Liverpool head to Brentford to take on Thomas Frank's side this Saturday lunchtime. With Ivan Toney back from his suspension amongst the goals already, Brentford are slowly but surely starting to resemble the side we became more familiar with across the past 2 seasons, but are still facing plenty of injuries across the squad. Joining me this week to discuss how the season's unfolded, where Toney's future may lie, and whether Thomas Frank would be a smart choice for Liverpool to consider once Klopp departs. I'm delighted to welcome on Mike Johnston from the Ealing Road Podcast to join me this week.
Welcome on, Mike. Good to chat with you.
Good to see you, mate.
So Brentford, always an interesting discussion when we're talking about Brentford over the past few seasons. Largely it's been a completely positive discussion, right, about just the incredible development that the club has shown the organisation off the pitch, on the pitch, some of the meticulous planning that we've come to expect from Brentford, certainly when we see them up against sides in the top 6 as well, very much holding their own and actually showing just how a well-run club can easily beat a club with more resources if the plan in place is properly put together. So, but just before we go into maybe specific points, I want to ask you: this point in the season, currently 14th in the league, 25 points. What are your overarching thoughts on how things have gone so far? We'll talk about maybe some of the key narratives. It does feel like a lot of this season's been waiting for one individual to return at some stages, but they've definitely not been resting on any laurels. What are your thoughts on sort of where Brentford find themselves and how the season's unfolded?
I think looking back to where we finished last season in 9th, a couple of points off a European spot, it's not been a season of progression in terms of the league table. But the important caveat to that is that we have been absolutely hamstrung, is a good word to use, by injuries. This season, we've had key men out basically the whole season. We lost Rico Henry at left back, who's arguably a bigger miss than Ivan Toney early on against Newcastle. Then we lost Aaron Hickey, who's one of the younger players in the squad, but again, a really promising talent and our only kind of attacking threat down the right-hand side, and he's very good defensively too. Chris Ayer's been out for a while. Obviously, Ivan Toney is the big one. We've missed him since the start, but Brian Mbeumo's been out recently. The list is endless. Brentford have had the worst injury record in terms of days missed in the league this year, which is definitely reflected in the league table. I think the worry going into this season was obviously how we're going to do without Ivan Toney, and we actually did quite well in the first few games without Ivan Toney. We drew 2-2 with Spurs on the first day, then we beat Fulham 3-0. And then after that, we had a couple of shaky performances against Palace and Bournemouth, still got draws out of both of them. Both of them we should have won. And that's the point where the injuries started to kick in. And then once they started, they just didn't stop. We've still got players out right now. And we've been on a pretty bad run of form. But since the return of Ivan Toney, it is marked. And I feel like because we've had so many injuries, the return of Ivan Toney makes it so much bigger, to the point that I think before he came back, we were kind of looking at this run of fixtures we got in February and seeing City twice, Liverpool, West Ham away, Wolves as well. we were looking at it and saying, if we don't come out of this month without any points, we are well and truly in a relegation fight. But now Ivan Toney's back, I'm confident. I think if there was a season to be bad in the Premier League, it's probably this one, considering the points deductions that have gone Everton's way, and the one that is likely to go to Nottingham Forest. So and also coupled with the fact that Sheffield United looked down and out, and so did Burnley. But Luton looked like they might get out of it, and Burnley still could. But I think this season there are definitely 3 worse teams than us. So to sum it up, I'm happy because, like I said, it's amazing to be in the Premier League, first of all. But I'm happy, given the context, given the injuries, that we haven't slipped further down the table. And now Ivan Toney's back, things are starting to look up.
Yeah, I think it was the game at Anfield, right? I think the injuries had already hit at that point. I remember the guest we had on that time was talking about, I think on the day, lining up with no recognised, or certainly no senior fullbacks, I think it was on the day for Anfield, and talking about the impact injuries we're having on Brentford already. I can't remember whether we had a discussion about, whenever any club has a large spate of injuries, is it luck? Are we talking about contact injuries here? Is there something that's like a little bit more worrying about the conditioning some of these players are going through? Are they just being pushed a bit too hard? Do you think it's been any of those things in particular, like bad luck, or just like is there a particular kind of injury people are going down with, hamstrings or something like that?
I think it's a mix, to be honest.
Okay.
Rico Henry did his ACL, but I think if you look across the league this season, there's been more injuries. There's more injuries across all the clubs, so it's a weird one to pinpoint. The Athletic did quite a good read on it a while back that I read, that I'm not going to try and cite, but it was good. It kind of broke down all the teams and all their different injury worries, because it is right. Like you hear fans come on different podcasts and they will say we've been absolutely killed by injuries this year. The worrying thing is that, for some reason, like Brentford this year, there's just been loads, and a lot of them have been at training. We signed a Emre Kun from the Turkish league, who's this massive prospect, supposed to be quite highly touted by European clubs, and we beat a lot of big teams to get in his name. And on his second day at the club, he like tore his hip abductor or something, which he's going to be out for 5 months. I didn't expect him to play first team football right away, but I think by the sounds of it, he was expected to be integrated into the team. And then Josh Da Silva the other day as well, who had just come back from an injury that's kind of plagued his Premier League career. He had surgery in his hip when we came up from the Championship. That kept him out for basically our whole first season. Then he came back, did his hamstring. That kept him out for basically the whole of the second season. And then he was looking to, he'd made a couple of appearances against Wolves in the league and in the cup, 2 really good appearances, and then came on as a sub against Tottenham, and then tore his ACL in training, and he's going to be out for another 9 months. So it's weird to hear how many of them have been happening through training as opposed to match days. I think most of them have been done in training. So I'm not going to sit here and be like they're training wrong, because I don't know what they're doing at training. It might just be an incredibly unlucky season, but there's got to be something going on. Something's happening. It's very strange to have so many injuries, and only one of them, or 1 or 2 of them, have been sustained during a game. Rico Henry was at Newcastle, but Kevin Schade was done in the warm-up. Josh Da Silva was done in training. Aaron Hickey was done in training. It's odd. I think I can't put it down to anything, but it is strange.
Yeah, I think it is league-wide as well. Just saying, I mean, these footballers are being asked to play more football than ever. And we know the intensity levels that you see in the Premier League as well. Some squads bigger than others as well. So some players really being asked to play, very often not being rotated that well as well. You're right. Everyone seems to be saying that they have some sort of injury crisis at their club. When you actually investigate it, some much more than others. I know Brentford have been heavily hit. It's something actually Liverpool fans have been, I suppose, not whining about too much, because obviously the club's doing well at the moment. But I did take it for granted that in the last game about 9 senior players out for Liverpool, and you go through them, and probably all of them would start, to be honest. Like Matip was out, Alisson was out last game. Trent obviously came back after a period of time out just to get injured again. Szoboszlai injured again. The myth of Thiago appeared for eight minutes against Arsenal, and then is now gone apparently for a couple more months. I'm sure there's a couple others, or Salah as well. Salah's been gone for a while. So there's no whining from the Liverpool side of things, but there's definitely a high proportion of these injuries, and I think you're seeing the gamble that coaches sometimes have to make over medical teams telling me to bring him back next week, but I can really use winning this game, and people just making that gamble, and sometimes it paying off and sometimes it not paying off, and you being without the player for considerably longer than that. You mentioned at the start of the season, without Toney, which everyone knew was going to be the big absence, players standing up, and actually the club's still doing well in spite of his absence. So the last pod that we had discussing the way in which Mbeumo had shouldered a lot of that burden with Toney out, Wissa to like some extent as well with the appearances he was making. Just talk to me a little bit about how Thomas Frank, sort of tried to approach that, quite clear sort of missing focal point to the attack, and how well you think those players have done when it comes to actually sort of filling that vacuum. It's a tough boots to fill.
I think the difference is massive. We have actually changed our playing style because of Toney's absence. I think last season, because we had that focal point of the team and we had a striker who was so dominant aerially, who would win 9 out of 10 of his duels a lot of the time. And also we had David Raya in goal, who just has a homing missile on his foot, and it would always used to plant on Toney's head. So we would a lot more direct in the first 2 seasons in the Premier League. We heavily relied on Toney and then the willing runners to get him behind. This season, because we don't have that focal point up top, it's become, we've started to play around at the back a bit more, which kind of makes me nervous sometimes because we don't really seem that used to it. And without a goalkeeper who's as good with his feet as David Raya was, it can be a bit dangerous when we've given away a lot of sloppy goals. But just like the biggest difference is the fact that we don't have Toney. We don't have that big number 9 up top who's going to not only win headers, but bring it down, bring others into play. And I feel like that's something about Ivan Toney that's really severely underrated by people who don't watch him week in, week out. He's not just a big target man. He is, in a lot of ways, a similar player to Harry Kane in the way that he can occupy defenders, drop into the pockets, spray a pass. Like the guy is is our best passer of the ball on the team, maybe apart from Matthias Jensen. He's got it all. And I feel like that's the biggest difference. We've decided to play out from the back a bit more. We've become more possession oriented. And I would say as well, to your point about it just being Bryan Mbeumo and Yohan Wissa picking up the slack, I think they would have got that from the mainstream media, the people that don't watch Brentford week in, week out, because Bryan Mbeumo and Yohan Wissa were scoring all the goals and they had such a great start to the season.
And Mopé as well, of course.
And Mopé's back now as well, who I'm sure we'll get onto because he's just hilarious. But the spine of Brentford's team goes all the way back to the Championship days. It hasn't changed at all, really. You think talking about, obviously David Raya's gone, but Ethan Pinnock at the back with Ben Mee, who's come in since been in the Premier League, but Ethan Pinnock was at the back, Pontus Jansson was at the back, Rico Henry was on the left flank, we've got Christian Norgard and Vitaly Arnau and Matthias Jensen in midfield. Those are 3 players that we've had right from the Championship days and have been at the club for quite a while now.
Yeah. So
it's at the start of the season, it was promising, and it was nice to see that Bryan Mbeumo was kind of taking on that mantle, because we'd had several conversations on our podcast about who's going to step in. This is time for Bryan Mbeumo to really step up and be the main guy at Brentford. But those first few results, when we were playing really well, maybe not getting the points on the board that we deserved, it was down to the cohesion of the team. And once we started to lose that spine, once we started to lose those really important players for us, and I can't stress how important Rico Henry is to the team. Once we lost him, it changed the whole dynamic of the season. And then we lose the other fullback who would cover for him, and then it kind of just all snowballs into Brentford being in a potential relegation fight. But yeah, I mean, the difference between playing with and without Toney is stark.
Yeah, I remember Jensen being one in particular, getting a lot of praise on the last show that we did with Brentford. It was just around the fact that it was a bit of a surprise that he'd filled some of the creative gap that, I mean, I think we were talking a little bit about Eriksen's time at the club and the way in which I think Jensen's development had surprised the guest that we had on last time in terms of the fact that he was still contributing and still sort of raising his game. I think that was particularly noted. And I do want to come on to Toney and talk about how things have been since he got back. But in terms of the fixtures, I mean, has there been a game this season that you could point to and go, this pretty much encapsulates our season, maybe in the good and the bad, in terms of when things did click and sort of the adjustments that Thomas Frank has made to deal with injuries and absences? The side was still able to function, a game that showcased that, and then also another game where you think, well, that just shows just what we're missing and the impact the injuries are having on us.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hello, I'm here to annoy you. I'm here to annoy you into listening to more of me and more of others on EPL Index. We don't just have the Anfield Index stuff. We've got EPL Index as well, which covers the entirety of the Premier League. And we have 3 podcasts and a whole bunch of really good writing on EPLindex.com. The podcasts are my own Two-Footed podcast, which is every day at 4 p.m, Monday through Friday, covering the whole league. We have A Tad Predictable, hosted by Tadiwa. You know Tadiwa, he does Anfield Index. He presents A Tad Predictable before every Premier League match week. And then Kevin DeVries and his crew on the EPL Roundtable, they're every week after the Premier League match week. So make sure you listen to everything we're doing on EPL Index and follow us there on Twitter at EPL Index. Thank you. Bye-bye.
I think the game that shows the bad side of it was, I could point to a few, to be honest. There's been a couple this season. Man United away, that was soul destroying. I'd have never experienced that at football. I've experienced some awful times as a Brentford fan, genuinely some of the worst. But that was right up there. And I really didn't expect it. Just being 1-0 up at Old Trafford and then 90 seconds, Scott McTominay of all people, bags of brace, and we lose. That was kind of testament to what we lack in terms of the injuries, just not being able to hold on to leads. Dropped 26 points from winning positions this season, which is a league high, and it's more than the first 2 seasons in the Premier League combined for Brentford. So that kind of tells you everything about the injuries and how they've hurt us. Because in terms of the 24 league games we played, we've led in 17 of them, and we dropped 26 points from those games. Which is it's just insane. Like, especially because in our second season in the Premier League, we went on a run. On our first and second season, over those 2 seasons, we went on a run of scoring first and not losing over it was a club record. I think we went like 25 games after scoring first and we wouldn't lose.
I was going to say, it's very un-Brentford to think of the side conceding leads in that manner. Yeah,
and I think I'd definitely cite Man United as one. Nottingham Forest, we played them away when they were down to 10, didn't have the cutting edge to get the second goal and ended up drawing 1-1. That was 2 points dropped. In terms of the good, I would say like last week against Wolves was more like the Brentford that I've been accustomed to in the last 2 Premier League seasons, where we'd very much be defensively set up. We set up in that low block and we hit teams on the break. And the difference was against Wolves, we had 2 banks. We basically parked everyone behind the ball. But it was that gritty performance and really digging your teeth in and getting the second goal. It was so important. And it was like the first time I'd seen Brentford get a first and get a second and go on to win the game in so long. And we just struggled to kill games off so much this season. I actually said to my mate at the time when we were at the game, I was like, we celebrate when they score first, because I was just so confident. We may as well have gone into that game at 1. We could have gone into the game 1-0 up and I still wouldn't have been confident that we won. But I feel like now we've got Toney back, and it's not just his skills on the pitch, it's just his presence. Like, I feel like it has a big factor on the kind of on the psyche of different players. Like, when you know that you've got a clinical striker up top who's going to finish chances if you give them, it just kind of switches your whole mentality almost. I feel like now that the players that maybe weren't performing as well when we were right in amongst it and the injuries kept piling up, now we've got Ivan Toney up top. It's like a boost. And I feel like that second goal against Wolves was vindication that, we're back. And I might be saying this too prematurely, because we do have, we play you and then we play City and then we play West Ham. So that's a tough run of fixtures. But that Wolves performance, it was just, especially because Wolves we played Wolves 4 times in under 2 months. So we got battered at home by them 4-1. Then we failed to beat them when they were down to 10 in the cup. And then in the replay, we lost to them. So it was kind of like we needed that win. They'd beaten us / drawn against us so many times in the last 2 months. But those would be some performances that kind of sum up our season so far.
Yeah, no, I think it makes sense. I mean, I think we had a similar thing last season with Wolves. We just kept playing them over and over again, like with different iterations. And I think by the end, like both sides were just like fed up with it. And like I think they did win the last one actually, which was pretty irritating. And also I think in terms of the most frustrating results of the season, the only game we've played against Man United so far, probably the most frustrating game of Liverpool season, even despite some of the losses. The loss against Arsenal and then the situation at Spurs, I think. But I can't imagine Scott McTominay scoring 90 plus minute goals against you. I had this phrase with a good friend of mine who's Man United fan, that whenever I do see Scott McTominay scoring, I'm like, just remember, whenever he's doing well, you're generally not as a club. Right? So it's like that's the correlation. Like if he's doing well, great, good for him, but that doesn't necessarily point to the greatest health for the club. So I think it's held firm, I'd say. I'm not sure there's been an athletic piece on it yet, but it's held firm, held firm throughout the season. I want to talk about Thomas Frank, and it feels like I'm not sure how much there is to talk about in terms of he's been hamstrung this season in terms of what he could really do when it comes to taking the side forward. He's got lots of praise since since Brentford came up, and I think rightfully so. I was talking at the start about his pretty meticulous approach when it comes to trusting in the setup that he's got at Brentford, but also thinking carefully about the teams that Brentford are playing to exploit the weaknesses that those teams have. Mm-hmm. I think he's quite pragmatic in those ways. What have you made about sort of his performance this season as the manager dealing with a difficult set of circumstances where players are out injured and your main focal points are obviously absent through the betting ban?
It's a good question because Brentford fans love Thomas Frank, and rightfully so. I think he's done the best that he could do. I don't think anyone could have foreseen. I mean, you can prepare for Ivan Toney being out. We knew that he was going to be out for so long, but in terms of the key players that we've lost, not having a official fullback at the club for however long we did. Yeah.
And you weren't expecting to. Were you expecting to actually lose Raya as well right before the season?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, so there's a big question mark around the keeper, Mark Flecken, that we brought in. He statistically was the best goalkeeper in the Bundesliga last season, but his first, up until the City game, really, which was only last week, a couple of weeks ago, he'd just been. I knew that there was. It's difficult because once you have a goalkeeper like David Raya, who we thought was amongst there with the best in the league, and we knew that he was going to get this big move somewhere, and I think he's kind of proven that now, even though he had a bit of a rocky start at Arsenal. When you bring the next keeper in, there's always going to be big shoes to fill, and he just wasn't living up to those shoes. He wasn't living up to the hype that was around him. His distribution was good, but his shot stopping, I think in terms of goals prevented this season, he's statistically the worst in the league. But he has had a great performance against Man City where he saved it from being a hammering, really. And then Nottingham Forest last week, Wolves last week, he had an even better one. So Thomas Frank's had a lot to contend with. I think the confidence issue with the keeper was a massive thing. After the Man City game, he came out and he said, I've not been hitting the levels that I can. And now that I've done that, this is the goalkeeper that I am, and this is the goalkeeper that Brentford bought. So there's the injuries. And I think some Brentford fans are so reactive on Twitter and stuff, as I'm sure a lot of fans are in football. Football fans are fickle, but someone suggested that the board should start looking at Thomas Frank, and it's just like the worst take I've ever heard. Because Thomas Frank is the reason we're here, and we absolutely adore him at Brentford. I think he's done the best that he can with the squad that he's got this season, and I think we'll stay up, and he'll probably be here next year. I want to know what you think about sort of Thomas Frank at Liverpool. I know Xabi Alonso is hard to look past, but I have seen some. I noticed the similarities between Frank and Klopp in terms of their personality and their charisma and how they conduct themselves in presses and how they can kind of rally up the fans. I see a lot of similarities between the two. But is it just too hard to look past Xabi Alonso at this point?
Yeah, it's interesting actually. I think after with any announcement like the Klopp announcement, you go through the sort of the similar stages of grief, to that denial and stuff like that. But then once they got around to looking at the candidates, and I heard Thomas Frank was mentioned quite early on to me by some folks who actually really respect their opinion, but I hadn't considered him at all. Not to be disrespectful, but actually the more that they spoke about it, to your point, you see the similarities, like the kind of personalities. You can see from what I said already that I think he's
and in the football as well. I think
football as well,
yeah.
But I just think as well, just the way the way he speaks about football and the way he speaks about his team, and not in a sort of faux he's going to play up to the cameras and be emotional and all that stuff. I think he speaks very well about the game, and seemed to have a similar won't claim to know his moral compass, but seemed to have a similar, sort of like a compass to himself that as Klopp, which I think is important. I think his record. I mean, people talk about Xabi Alonso, and it's in some ways the romantic choice, given his previous time at the club. But the record, he's still building that record at the moment. Very impressive, obviously. But I do somewhat worry about the fact that this is a guy who's not really had to face adversity at all throughout his career. How will he handle that? In my head, I can see him being this incredible, calm, composed manager like Zidane or whatever for many seasons to come. It seems that sort of character. But I think when you're looking at Thomas Frank's record as well, there's going to be lots to stand up there. So I think he's a candidate that actually compares and contrasts pretty well. I'm not sure what Liverpool fans think of in terms of. I don't think many people would care around, can he jump from Brentford or whatever to Liverpool? I don't think people care about that. I think the only thing that makes me slightly reticent is I think you mentioned the similarities there between him and Klopp, and I'm sort of mindful of, do you try and...
Do you try and be the next Klopp, or do you kind of make it your own thing? Yeah,
exactly. Like, do you try and do that, or do you actually is someone like Xabi Alonso a good idea because he's completely different character? So I don't know. It seems there's so much noise around Xabi Alonso at the moment, just given, I guess, how Leverkusen are doing, and it seems as though there's a lot of momentum around it, but nothing official, right? So I think it's we'll have to wait and see. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if Thomas Frank is on that short list of people who are being considered. I don't really want to talk about snatching him away from Brentford at all, but I'd certainly be one who thinks his record stands up. I think he would be a good fit, and I think when you're a Liverpool manager, it's not just what you're producing on the football pitch. It needs to be a cultural fit as well. And I think he would. I think he'd fit quite nicely. But
I think with Thomas Frank, just because. I know you said Liverpool fans maybe wouldn't care about the fact that he's not managed at a big club, but I think it's quite a big difference in that if he were to go to Liverpool, and I don't think he will, but if he were, he would be going to a club where you're expected to win every week. He hasn't dealt with that kind of pressure.
True.
And I feel like the Graham Potter to Chelsea move, I feel like that's kind of it. Like, even if clubs don't want to admit it, it probably has some sort of effect. It's like, we've taken someone from Brighton, we're going to bring him to a bigger club, and it was just a train crash. I say that, but he's got the similar points tally to Pochettino. But it's like if you take, and don't get me wrong, I think Thomas Frank could do the Liverpool job, and I think he'd do it quite well. But I feel like he probably needs another club before he makes that move.
Perhaps. I know what you mean, but I think Chelsea's kind of a difficult test base for anything.
Anywhere.
because it's just like I can imagine if Graham Potter had gone to Spurs, it would have been a completely different story. I think that he just picked one of the most unstable places to sort of test himself. So it'd be interesting to see where he pops up. But I don't think
Potter at Liverpool.
Potter at Liverpool, guys, no. I don't think so. I think he has to work his way back up. I'm surprised Palace didn't try, to be honest. I think with some of the suggestions around Hodgson moving on, but Ivan Toney. Then I think we've talked about him here and there, but I think actually just focusing in on him, absent for so long, of course, and during that time, I felt like I constantly kept seeing these stories about him telling his story, his side of the story. Like this, I felt like I saw that 5 or 6 different times. Yeah, obviously the Diary of a CEO interview as well that he did. He's a fascinating character to me. I think he's an incredibly effective footballer, and a lot of what you were talking about with the stuff that he contributes outside of the goals, bringing others into play. Just the sheer amount of work that he puts in was the first thing that struck me when we drew 3-3 against Brentford in that first game away that we played against you. Since he's come back, naturally it's impossible to keep him away from the headlines. He contributes. He's there, he's scoring goals and influencing games. Just want to talk to you. I mean, you've already alluded to sort of how things have changed since he's come back, and have Brentford now reverted to the approach that you're used to in terms of because that focal point's there again, or do you think because of the other absences, it's still a bit of a mix?
I don't think we've really seen Brentford pre-Ivan Toney's ban from football as of yet, just because the teams we've played. Forest, strangely, we set up in a 5. City, we were always going to set up in a 5.
Yeah.
And we did again against Wolves. Because it's like you mentioned, Thomas Frank's quite adept at sort of sussing out the opposition, looking at what formation they play, and then attacking from there. So we haven't really seen him be used as the kind of focal point that he had been used previously. I think we might do when we play a team who set up in a 4 and we maybe have Brian Mbumo back and Johan Wissa's back from AFCON now. Right. If we can set up in a 3 and have those 2 options up top, as opposed to just Neil Maupay, who isn't a willing runner in behind. That's just not his game. I think we probably will see that kind of revert back to the old playing style that we used to have that was so effective against bigger teams. I feel like as well to just like kind of sidetrack a little bit, the interviews, they are they're terrible. I think Brentford fans have kind of come off worse in this situation somehow, even though our striker has done these things, and it's like our striker's done these things and now he's making us kind of look like mugs. I think a lot of Brentford fans are very much in the camp of love the player, but we kind of dislike the man.
I was going to say that actually, because I think that was the next point I was going to go on to, was obviously this the fact that Brentford have obviously agreed a deal for Igor Thiago, a striker, to join in the summer, which sort of has the smell of the replacement for Ivan Toney if he is to move on. And then I saw obviously the quotes that Thomas Frank saying that he expects, he thinks it's likely that that Ivan Toney will leave. But then to your point, you see this interview that Toney gives where...
Which one?
But it was after the game, after he scored against Wolves. There was an interview where he's almost acting coy about, if he doesn't want me. It's like, everyone knows what's going on and the way in which he's been, batting his eyelids at clubs. And I do share... I was going to ask you how fans perceive him, because... this is not the first time, right? There's been multiple occurrences of this where you'd imagine the club means everything to him, and yet there's these. He seems to disrespect the club quite a bit, in my opinion.
I don't need a VPN. I've got nothing to hide. This is what I used to tell myself before I hooked up with LibertyShield.com. Not only is my home internet now fully encrypted, but I can now access all the websites I want, whenever I want, and do so from absolutely anywhere. As a Liverpool fan, I love to know I can now watch every match, regardless of whether it's on UK TV or not. My Liberty Shield VPN makes sure nothing is blocked and guarantees me super fast streaming speed throughout that match. You can get connected right now with their software package, which includes a 48-hour no-obligation free trial and instant access to their apps for Apple, Android, Fire TV, PC, Mac, and Android TV. Or go a step further like I have and get one of their pre-configured VPN routers. These small but powerful devices allow you to easily connect every device in your home to VPN, making it the perfect solution for smart TVs, Mac boxes, and games consoles. Visit LibertyShield.com today and use coupon code AIVPN25 to get 25% off at checkout.
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, we have to say that there is nothing wrong with being confident. There's nothing wrong with knowing your ability, and there's nothing wrong with having ambition. No. I have no problem with that. It works for him. He knows he's going to score goals. He knows he's a good player. He's got ambitions to play at the top club. But I just feel like with the optics of it, and I know there's a bit of a cliche in football, the optics just don't look good. Like the fact that you have kind of brought the club into disrepute by the gambling allegations, followed up by the fact that the club have stuck by you through this. We've given you the 16-week specific training plan. It's just like it. We've paid his wages as well, by the way, whilst he's been gone. It's just like, you would think that when you do these interviews and you come out, you would say, I know that I want to play at a top club. That's fair enough. Don't have a problem with that. But right now I'm a Brentford player. He never said that in any of those interviews. He just said, right now I'm focused on playing my football. If he'd have said, right now I'm focused on playing my football at Brentford, then I don't think I'd had a problem with it. And it's also just like the fact that he hasn't signed a new contract, like a club isn't going to come in for him in the summer if we get him to put pen on paper. It's going to happen. Like someone's going to fork out the money. And we'll probably get. I still think, to be honest, that we're going to get quite a large fee for him over the summer, especially if he carries on scoring goals at the rates that he is now. But it's just like kind of makes Brentford fans look a bit soft, and it's hard to dislike someone who scores goals and kind of digs you out of tight situations. But I just feel like some of the stuff that he said we did like a conversation, like a player tier list during the international break. It was just a bit of fun, really.
Sure.
But we had the kind of conversation about whether Ivan Toney could ever be considered a club legend. And I didn't think he can, just because of the way he's spoken about the club in the past. I just think he's a very good footballer, and I'm glad that he's here, and I'm glad that he's helped us into the Premier League. But I think just some of the stuff he said now, it's just like, we'll do that. I wouldn't have been that fussed if he'd have gone in January, to be honest. Knowing that if we'd have brought in a player before then, actually, no, if we'd have brought a player in before, like Thiago from Bruges, I feel like in January definitely needed him, but it's just some of the things that he said, it just makes it hard to like him the way he used to when he first signed for the club.
Yeah, and I know exactly what you mean. I mean, obviously, I think I agree with what you're saying about there's nothing wrong with confidence, and I think that arrogance in footballers, especially strikers, is what you want to see. But yeah, to your point, you could easily have just like you could have done this differently, where you're just nice and professional about it. Everyone knows what's going to go on at the end of the season. You're not going to sign a new contract and whatever, and but yeah, you're doing your job, and you don't have to talk to everybody about the situation. You straight back to it. And I think one thing that will be interesting, and football's a very fickle game, so if you score goals, generally people are willing to forgive anything. But I do wonder whether or not some of this will impact where he ends up. Personally, I do wonder, because you're increasingly seeing that around. Okay, do I necessarily want someone who is going to be? I don't know. I'm not calling another black player a disruptive force in the dressing room. I think it's a very lazy stereotype, but I do wonder about just how some of this stuff might impact where he eventually ends up. Having said that, I don't think anybody would give a damn if he scores 20, 25 goals, right? Come the end of the season, if he was to end up somewhere else as well. But yeah, I hear what you're saying, right, about the legend. Yeah, and so can you consider him a club legend for sure? And in terms of Igor Thiago and what we know about him, is he a striker in a similar mold, based on some of the?
I mean, we only signed him yesterday, so I've had to do a bit of reading.
Oh, delicious!
He has scored 16 goals in 24 appearances for Bruges this season,
nice.
And he's the second highest top goal scorer in the league. He's got, I think, the highest dual success rate in the league. Focal point, very much a 6-yard box striker. I think he's got the most amount of goals from inside the 6-yard box in the league.
Okay,
penalty taker. Yeah, I think you can't really take much, because I'm not going to sit here and be like, I know him like the back of my hand. I've watched a few compilations of his goals this season. I've read up on some stats, but I mean,
that's it.
Just the fact, it was the fact I was saying to my girlfriend last night. I was like, just the fact that we've brought in a Brazilian striker, a £30 million Brazilian striker to play for Brentford, was just a bit of like fever dream stuff. I was explaining to my girlfriend, I was like, she comes to football with me now, but I was explaining like Brazilian strikers, iconic. Like there's no way we've got this £30 million Brazilian striker to come play for Brentford. It was kind of just like a head scratcher, but I'm hoping that he's good. He sounds good. He's 16 goals in 24 games is a good record. I think he's got Europa League experience, a couple goals in the Europa League as well. So it's definitely a sign that Ivan's going to move on. I think we knew that before, but it's nice to see Brentford acting early and getting some business done before the summer transfer window, because we didn't have the best January transfer window. We brought in Sergio Reguilon, who's been outstanding. You can see his class. Another one where it's like started his career at Real Madrid and then is now at Brentford. It's just a bit of a head scratcher, but it's nice to see Brentford being proactive in the transfer market, and nice to see that we're already preparing for life after Toney.
Yeah, exactly. Sort of the club moves on. Just like, you're not going to get yourselves into a situation in the summer where you're panicking about how to replace him. It's already done, and then you can sort of like focus on the best offer that comes the club's way, I imagine. But
how much would you pay for him?
For Ivan Toney, was it 27 years old? Ivan Toney,
1 year left on his contract at the end of in the summer.
Oh, there's 1 year left. There's 1 year left.
1 year left in the summer. He would have had 18 months in January, but.
I can see a club offering. Well, it's all been blown out of the water now, isn't it? With some of these,
it's Chelsea.
some of these deals that have been offered. I mean, I can see. I mean, what did Kane go for? I mean, that was
80.
He had 1 year left, and he's obviously got a bigger pedigree than Toney, despite what Toney's done. Yeah, I can see someone throwing 50, 60. Yeah.
I'd say 60. I'd push it high to 70. Genuinely, I feel like if he carries on scoring, I think there's going to be a bit of a bidding war between clubs that are going to pick him up.
I can see him also being the sort of guy who would put a transfer request in. Like, to be honest, like in a different way, right?
That is nailed on.
If someone offers 40 million and Brentford are like, no, I think we can get more than that. I can see can see the announcement on social media. Ivan Toney has submitted a formal transfer request. He will be training with the reserves or whatever. Unfortunately, I can't see that. But so I don't know. I can see. I wouldn't be surprised 50 million with some sort of add-ons that are not disclosed personally. But out of interest, where do you think he ends up? Not nothing to think about, but
I think Arsenal is looking like the one, isn't it? I know it's
they're the ones who seem to have the need, I'd say.
Yeah, I've read into the kind of need for Arsenal's number 9, but I feel like I know it's there, and there's I've watched so many Arsenal games this season where it's just like if they'd have had Ivan Toney in that position, they're winning this game easly.
Yeah,
and
just
even when we've played against Arsenal, he just gives their defense a nightmare. Like when we not this season because he didn't play, but last season when we played them at the Emirates, he was just There's been games where I've seen Toney look better, if not on the level with any other striker in world football. Genuinely, and I don't say that just because I'm a Brentford fan. I got Brentford hat on. Genuinely, there's been games where I've seen him dominate Van Dijk. I've seen him dominate Saliba. And the game at your place last season, where I think we lost 1-0. I want to say it was 1-0, but we played okay. But I just remember being there and just watching Toney and just the elegance. And when we signed him, I didn't realise the kind of the full package that we were. Yeah, he's so cultured, such a cultured footballer. But I think Arsenal. I think Arsenal was probably the immediate kind of the team that springs to mind. But I wouldn't be surprised if Chelsea thrown a bid. I think Tottenham could probably do with him as well. I think you'll be all right, just in terms of your attacking options.
Yeah,
we're
not going
to. Yeah. But I'd say probably Arsenal's the obvious choice, and he's said that he might want to sign for Arsenal. He's got people in his Instagram comments. I think
I'm sure he does.
He posted something, and I think it was like an actor from Top Boy, Michael Ward, posted on the bottom. It was like, "Come to Arsenal, bro," and it was like liked by the author. It's just like. Come on, mate. Just stop. You need to get some PR training for fuck. Oh God, can I swear on this?
No, it's all right. Don't worry about it. It's just it's fine. I think we all know the sentiment for sure. I mean, I didn't even know about that. That's exactly the sort of stuff. Where you're just like, this is just like. You do owe Brentford. You do owe Brentford, and I think like your point is, it's not like I mean, whatever your perspective on the ban and the nature of the ban and the reasons behind the ban, there were enough reasons for him to be absent, I would say, for a period of time. And it's like to your point earlier on, like it's not Brentford who've caused him this, right? He's done this. He's come back. Brentford are the ones who've had to deal with that. The least you'd imagine is some sort of respect towards the end of the season. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, I'm interested this weekend. It's early kickoff. It's going to be likely Van Dijk and Konate at the back, so it'll be interesting. I think from memory, Konate was the one who I saw struggle, or maybe Matip, who I definitely saw struggle against Toney in the past. It'd be interesting to see this season because I think Van Dijk's been much closer to the levels that we saw a couple of seasons ago, and even Konate as well loves that sort of challenge given sort of his physical strengths. But what kind of approach are you expecting? It's Liverpool. Had that loss against Arsenal, but that was really the first one of the season if you discount the not getting a goal for whatever at Spurs. So then bounced back, of course, against actually completely forgotten who we just beat in the last game, but bounced back against Burnley. And so clearly in good form. Like there were absences. I'm expecting a couple players to be back, whilst a couple players to still be absent. Szoboszlai not going to be there. Trent's not going to be there, but Alisson's back. Konate's back. Salah is back, which is the big one.
Is he back for sure, or is he just in training?
Yeah, that's true. Maybe I'll just see him in training. I think he's. And
I'm hoping he's not back.
I know what the personality's like. It's going to be demanding a start, I'm guessing. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see him actually to be like
on the bench, maybe
be on the bench and come on. But it's a hell of a sub to have. But yeah, how do you expect Thomas Frank to approach that game?
I think it's going to be a fantastic game for one. I think the styles of Frank and Klopp, they kind of match up perfectly. It's high tempo, it's high press, it's a lot of space sometimes, can be end to end. Like the games we played at the G-Tech against Liverpool have been some really fun games to watch for a neutral, I'd imagine, especially the 3-3 in the first season. Yeah. So I expect it to be fun, and I'm looking forward to it. But I do expect Brentford to be on the back foot for most of the game and look to be hitting Liverpool in the counter like we do against the top 6 teams. And it's something that gave us a lot of success last season. In terms of how we set up, it will be a back 5. The important thing is that we have Johan Wieser back from AFCON. So it'd be interesting to see whether he sets up with Neal Maupay, because he has been in blistering form, and Brentford fans absolutely adore the guy, by the way. Absolutely adore him, and he's just the pantomime villain in the league, and I love it. I love everything about Neal Maupay. So it'd be hard to drop him at the moment, but I think with the way that Liverpool play and having watched the Burnley game, I mean, Fofana had a couple of clear-cut chances against you last time out. Do you know what? I think Brentford fans see this game as kind of a free hit. I think when we looked at our fixture list in February, when it was City, Wolves, Liverpool, City, West Ham, we were kind of looking at the Wolves and the West Ham games as games looking to get maybe 4 points out of in total. Now that we've got the Wolves win, I think this one is just a free hit for us, and I think that suits us. And I think it's a bit of a treacherous one for you guys, because I feel like now with the way City are purring, they just look like they're going to win every game. So every game for Liverpool and Arsenal is kind of a massive one in terms of points dropped. And I think the game against Arsenal that you lost a couple of weeks ago, I feel like maybe you'd have come to the Brentford knowing that we kind of cause you problems at home, a bit more confident or a bit more kind of laid back about the situation, like we'll take a point maybe. Whereas now, I feel like now the points have been dropped against Arsenal and they've got the 3. It's like every game has a bit of jeopardy to it. So I think it'd be a good game. I think it will give you a good run for your money, and it'll be nice to have Toney back in the side. I mean, even when we played you earlier in the season and we lost 3-0, I know it was 3-0, but I wouldn't say we played badly. I don't think 3-0 was maybe a true reflection of the game. I think clinical finishing, I think Salah scored. I can't remember. Jota maybe scored once as well.
Yeah.
But
2 from Salah.
I think genuinely, whenever we played Liverpool in the Premier League, it's always been a good game. And I don't think I've seen us play badly against Liverpool, which is a good sign. And I'm looking forward to it. I think it will be competitive. I think Liverpool look like they're in good form at the moment. Brentford have got a big win against Wolves last time out. I think it was going to be good. It's exciting. I can't predict it. I genuinely can't. My heart wants to say Brentford going to win. But my head is probably telling me that it'll be too strong.
Yeah, I'm expecting an entertaining game as well. Well, actually not entertaining, because it's never entertaining when you're actually part of the 2 teams who are a part of it, really. But I think the pressure's definitely ratcheted up. I mean, maybe I'm just being bitter, but I mean, I didn't think the Arsenal defeat told me anything really about the side other than like reliable players made mistakes, and we missed some folks on the day. But I don't know. I mean, I've seen City purring. I haven't seen it just yet, but I know that they're about to do what they always do in terms of sort of putting together a run of games, and the fact that Liverpool have got City in a few weeks is definitely.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Well, one I'm looking forward to. Just hope everybody can be back fit for it. So it'll be a good game. Also looking forward to your game against Arsenal. I have to say, I can see Toney doing some pretty fun stuff on that day. Fingers crossed. It's always fun to see the reaction. To be honest, but Anyway, Mike, I want to really thank you just for coming on and for sharing all your thoughts on how the season's gone so far, and what we can expect from Brentford between now and the end of the season. I think we are going to see a Brentford that we recognise a bit more than we've seen so far this season, even if there are still key players, as you talked about, who are out. So yeah, interested to see sort of how that develops. Interested to see how any links with Thomas Frank develop, to be honest. At the moment, it feels like it's all, I don't know, TalkSport kind of links at the moment, but we'll see. Yeah. The longer it goes on, the closer we get to that finish, I'm sure more links are going to start to emerge when it comes to the replacement for Klopp, as nasty as that is to think about. But yeah, thanks again, Mike. Really appreciate you coming on.
No worries at all, mate. Really enjoyed that, actually. Pleasure.
No worries. And then just looking ahead, just to all the listeners here, those who've been listening to these rival recons throughout the season, what's next for us? It's a game against Luton on the 21st of February, so there'll be a pod ahead of that. I'll be at that game, and so this is obviously, I can't remember what my record is in terms of wins, but hopefully that's going to be a banker, probably the Gary Neville sort of the banker meme that you can drop on the internet. But there'll be another pod ahead of that game, so do tune in for another episode ahead of that match.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at AnfieldIndex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.
Sports Social Podcast Network.